Good. Our first speaker will be Diane Gilpin. She replaces Gavin Allwright because he is sick. So she just was able to confirm this morning. She told me that she is now downloading WebEx. So she must be with us in a moment. The second speaker is sitting next to me, so he can start whenever we want to start. I think it's Diane. Super. Welcome. That's really fantastic. Thanks so much.
Welcome. It's good to be here.
We are two here. So there is next to me is the president of the International Association for Sustainable Aviation. Hello. So from our side, then let's start.
Shiri sir, your mic is on mute.
Yes. So good afternoon and good evening to all of you. Let us start this session on wind and solar power in transportation, rail, road, shipping and aviation. And as you all know, transportation is one of the hard to abate sector as far as the emission reduction targets are considered, and it is primarily driven by the fossil fuel. Total about globally about 17%, 16.9% of the GHG emissions are from transport sector, both passenger and freight transport, and majority of it is from rail, from road transport, and followed by the shipping, aviation, shipping, and then by rail. So today we have excellent speakers from across the globe who will talk about how do we tackle the challenge of using renewable energy for transport sector, be it electric vehicles or alternate fuel vehicles or hydrogen powered vehicles. So I will request our third speaker to Kevin Allwright from IWSA to give his perspective on renewable energy in shipping.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
I am not Gavin Allwright.
Sorry.
No, that's all right. He has been taken ill with COVID, so I'm stepping in for him. So apologies if my presentation isn't as smart as it might be, but I'm really pleased to be here. It's really good to meet you all, and thank you for inviting the IWSA to participate in this marvelous event. I'm just about to share Gavin's presentation, and it's really interesting to think about transportation. Your introduction was very pertinent, Mr. Garud, because the idea that transport is hard to abate, I think, is one that we have embraced. But when we look at it closely, I think we have lots of technical solutions that are available to us. And the International Windship Association works particularly in global shipping. I have the great good fortune of talking to other people in the aviation sector, and they say to me that they would be delighted to have the opportunities for decarbonisation that we do in shipping. And so obviously the clue's in the name. This is about wind propulsion, but we're not thinking about wind propulsion in centuries past. We're looking at how do we use 21st century technology solutions and how do we deploy them rapidly into the international shipping sector, and how can we do that in line with the climate science. So as you rightly point out, 17% of global greenhouse gas emissions are coming from the transport sector, and about 2 or 3% of that global greenhouse gas emissions comes from shipping. So it's a sizable contribution. We need to do something about it, but really pertinently, we need to do something about it in the very short term. The science is saying that we need to reduce emissions in this decade, ahead before the end of 2030, by between a third and a half. And that's a really tough challenge. Most of the technology that we're looking at in the global shipping sector is relating to alternative fuels that are not really planned to be market ready until at least the end of this decade. So in the meantime, emissions from shipping are rising, and that is exactly the opposite of what we need to be achieving in a climate emergency. So the International Windship Association has been developed to promote a variety of different solutions across the globe, and I work with Gavin around some of these technology solutions. I'm not as competent and as knowledgeable as him in all of them, but I will talk you through some of the developments we're making in the International Windship Association. We need to promote the message that wind is a viable solution for international shipping today. That doesn't mean to say that it is suitable for every single ship in the fleet, but there has been significant research undertaken in the UK by the Department for Transport that predicts 40,000 vessels in the global fleet of 60,000 are suitable for wind assist, either as a retrofit or as a new build solution. So our role at the International Windship Association is to tell that story and to demonstrate that the technology is viable and that it is doable in the short term and can have a significant impact on reducing emissions from the global fleet. So the International Maritime Organization, with whom we work closely, have made a commitment to reduce emissions by 50% by 2050. That is not in line with the Paris Agreement, and nor is it in line with climate science. The challenges that the IMO have in achieving consensus are mirrored by the UNFCCC challenges. It's very, very difficult to get consensus across the world with different countries at different stages of development of their technologies. And so it's a huge challenge politically, but technically, I think we have a number of solutions. The IMO promoted during COP26 the opportunity for reducing emissions through hull coatings. If you combine that with wind, you can start to see significant improvements in the very short term. So we're working at IWSA with the Sustainability Development Goals, and we are looking at all of them, obviously, but specifically, we respond to climate change with our technology. Those technologies are not just hardware. We're integrating them for SDG 2 with advancing technologies into that regulatory framework, which is why we're working with the IMO. We are looking particularly to improve implementation across the world, specifically with small island developing states and LDCs as well. We see there's a real opportunity for taking this technology into developing economies and working together to promote it. We have a number of opportunities to engage with the IMO, and we take those regularly. So we're developing a strategic plan to think about how we can implement wind into the global shipping fleet. One of the key aspects that we're looking at in global shipping as a community is to replace fossil fuels with alternative fuels. And there's a really interesting dynamic here that the fossil fuels need to be replaced. Absolutely. We need to be developing hydrogen, ammonia, methanol, biofuels, whatever fuel the industry decides will be suitable. But what I think is really important to understand is that if we're converting offshore wind, which is where a lot of this hydrogen fuel is proposed to be coming from, we are not using energy as efficiently as possible as we might want to in an energy depleted world. So if you convert wind energy into hydrogen to propel ships, then you lose something like 90% of the original energy that was created by the wind turbines. The proposition that we make is that you can use that thrust directly from the wind energy on suitable ships to provide the driving force. It is absolutely zero emissions. It's abundant. It's available today. It's exclusively available to ships. So, you know, cars, airplanes, they can't use it. So we should be using it in our responsibility to the global community. It doesn't need on land infrastructure developments. We can do it today. And the cool thing is, as the secondary fuels come along, the secondary renewable fuels like hydrogen and ammonia come along, we will be reducing demand for that, which is really helpful for the industry because that fuel will be more expensive and critically less energy dense. So we'll need to have bigger tanks, which will reduce the payload, the ability for the assets to make money. So installing wind is logical and sensible, and we are engaging with lots of organisations now to think about how we can do it. The challenge is the communication is not really yet fully embraced in the shipping industry. So there's not much capital available to be testing real world solutions. We'll come on to a few that are in the market at the moment, but there is a big gap in funding early stage technology so that we can demonstrate that this technology works and we can verify the fuel savings that we've modelled with digital twins. So I think it's very frustrating for the industry as a whole not to be able to see more technology. I speak to lots of ship owners who really would like to see the technology, but they're not in the business of R&D, so they just want to buy it. Getting the technology to market, and it's not only in our sector, it's in many sectors, is a really big challenge, and one I think we should be addressing as a global community. There are very different ways of thinking about reducing emissions from global shipping in this decade, in line with the 1.5 degrees climate target. That's not exceeding 1.5 degrees global temperature. So we can use wind, we can think about optimization of the fleet, we can think about ways in which to more smartly manage the ships so we don't drive them fast across the ocean and then have them idle outside ports. So we have a better management system. We can start to think about ways in which we can improve the quality of the hull. And there are lots of other available solutions on the market today that we can start to develop. What we lack is very clear short-term policy that we need to act. Having said that, the industry itself wants to act, and so the implementation of clear policy is in everybody's interest. So we are having some success. There are 15 or so ocean-going vessels with wind assist systems installed already. We are expecting more of those to be taken up in the near future. And my experience, my personal experience, comes from innovation over many years. And I think what happens is you start off, you go slow, 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 and then when the technology is recognised, then there's an explosion of uptake. And I think we're just on the crest of the wave now for that development. We are talking to multiple different external organisations. By external, I mean the cargo owners. The cargo owners and us as consumers want to buy green shipping. It's not readily available today. We are seeing that there's a pipeline emerging for this technology, and there's a huge potential for bulk carriers particularly, but also tankers as the technology develops. So we are spending a lot of time and money thinking about how do we decarbonize shipping into the future. We're focusing that on fuels. The IWSA is arguing that if we started to implement wind today, the fuel savings that we would make, the value of the fuel savings that we make, could start to contribute to the development and the acceleration of other renewable energy sources, secondary renewable energy sources like hydrogen and wind. So we can start to see that this will be a beneficial effect for everybody, and we can start to develop alternative fuel in concert with developing wind technology. So we don't need to do one or the other, we need to do both. This is a climate emergency that we're addressing. And so the key is the end users. The key is not only ship owners, but organisations that are creating the demand pool, that are bringing to the shipping industry the demand for green shipping today. And we're seeing that across multiple large international organisations, owners of cargo. We saw an announcement recently where big consumer brands like Unilever and IKEA were demanding that they would be using only renewable fueled powered ships in the foreseeable future. So I think there's a real opportunity, there's a real need to decarbonise shipping. We have to do it, but I think what we're missing is an opportunity to use offshore wind to provide direct power to certain ships in the global fleet. Thank you very much for listening. I hope that some of that made sense for my last minute presentation. I'm happy to take questions as and when necessary.
Thank DNA. I think it was very interesting presentation. I think the whole concept of powering large ships, including vessels and tankers with direct wind. This is, as a technologist, I find it quite exciting because that is the technology which was in use for hundreds of thousands of years across the globe. And just would like to mention that in India, in Terry, we are trying to energize the small ferry boats which are used for public transport in river transport to power them from diesel to solar powered electric motors. And so we are running some pilot projects in Varanasi and Chitrakoot area of Uttar Pradesh and Karnataka. And now Narayan will also talk about our other initiatives. But before that, I will request Ralph Nolting from ISA to speak about renewable in aviation.
Oh, so thank you very much. Let me just briefly introduce, and I'm very pleased that we have our two partner organizations here. One is the International Windship Association. Thanks a lot also, Diane, I mean, this was really last minute, literally, because unfortunately, your secretary, Gavin, we hope he's getting well soon. He couldn't join us. Now we have another important partner organization, the International Association for Sustainable Aviation, which touches the other transportation sector, where we do not really see yet progress, but we are very keen on working with these two sectors. And I'm very pleased that actually it's not Mr. Ralph Neuting, but the president of the International Association for Sustainable Aviation, Mr. Rolf Derpinghaus. He's now in my office. Fortunately, they are also in Bonn, so we can he can present from my office here, and I will, if you have allowed me to share, so I will then hand over to Mr. Derpinghaus so that he can share, show you the presentation. Okay.
So, sorry about that. Okay, that's fun. Yes, I would like to start with a very warm welcome to our friends in India, and of course, a very nice afternoon to you. Well, I would like to talk about the connection between wind power and aviation, and I think protecting the climate and powering aviation with e-fuels made from wind and sun says already a lot. But before we are going a little bit more in details, I have to make some remarks about the state of the air transport industry. The challenge of climate change is not new for our industry. This is something we are discussing as long as everybody else. The new situation is that I think there are very few industries which are so hard hit by the COVID pandemic as the air transport industry. And therefore, we are now in a situation that we have one of the biggest challenges this industry has ever faced with the climate change, and also the worst challenge ever seen with COVID. And squeezed between these two crises, aviation or air transport industry is in a very, very difficult situation. Something which is always helpful is to look back. And before COVID started, the air transport industry was one of the most dynamic and fastest growing industries in the world. And there was an expectation that in 15 years from now, worldwide, nearly 8 billion people will travel by air. That means that nearly everybody living on this planet has an opportunity to fly at least once in a year. And the demand for aircraft until 2036 was nearly 50,000. And the fuel amount which was used worldwide on jet fuel was about 100 billion gallons a year. So these numbers showing that the air transport industry is a very, very strong and powerful industry, or used to be. And now, worldwide travel restrictions as never seen before, the worldwide economic impact and the recession in many parts of the world, very severe. And for the airlines, this meant that the worldwide burn of cash was so severe that nobody could expect something like that. Just to give you some information, the year 21 is, of course, a little bit better than the year 2020, but we have still a reduction in passenger traffic about 40%. That means overall nearly 2.3 million passengers flew less than the year before. And the loss of the worldwide airline community is about 330 billion. This is a lot of money. So that is the industry, the state of the industry, which couldn't be worse. So in that time, we have to look forward. How can we mitigate the climate change? And of course, Glasgow, the World Climate Summit has shown again, Glasgow has shown us time is running very fast. So for Europe, Eurocontrol, this is the organization doing the flight coordinations all over Europe, made a forecast for the next 7 years. And it shows that if you have an optimistic view, it will take about 4 years to come back to previous numbers. And if you have a more pessimistic view, it might take up to 2027 until we reach the level of the year 2019. This is just in terms of traffic, passenger traffic. This doesn't mean that the industry is able to recover till that date financially. That's a big difference. Forecasting the development of aviation is always very difficult. And unfortunately, we are not in a position to wait until the COVID-19 crisis is settled. We have to ask immediately. So time is a very important part of the game. And when we look to potential solutions, we have always to keep in mind what is time-wise possible in the time available. Basically, we have 4 major ways to improve the quality of air transport in terms of protecting the climate. First of all, we can do what we have done before, improving aircraft. We were very successful. The industry was very successful till from the early 19th till 2016. The fuel consumption was reduced by more than 40%, just by improving technology, aerodynamics, airframes, operations, and so on. But that's not enough to make aviation, the air transport industry, really sustainable, really green, and really climate friendly. So we need something in addition, and this is sustainable aviation fuels. And what we have to look for is we cannot change every aircraft. So these new fuels have to fit into the existing fuel system. And then besides fuel, if you look a little bit further, we have the opportunity to improve, of course, operations. And then we have, of course, the so-called market-based measures. That means that you have to pay a fee just to pollute the atmosphere with CO2. What was possible by just by technology is, just to show you an example, is the Airbus A350-900, which has a fuel consumption than much less than 3.5 liters, 3 liters per 100 passenger kilometers. In 2016, 5 years from now, before now, the best aircraft has reached an average of about 3.5 liters. So you can see in just this short period of 5 years, there was another progress made. Major aircraft manufacturers, for example, Airbus, but Boeing is doing the same, are also looking for hydrogen solutions. And hydrogen is an ideal fuel, of course, but if it comes to the practical use of hydrogen in an aircraft, it becomes very, very, very complicated. It's not burning or not using hydrogen in a fuel cell. It's just the problem how to store hydrogen in aircraft. And these problems are so severe that we think from EASA that it will take at least another 15 to 20 years just to get ready with this technology. So with this technology, which is really looking good, we cannot fulfill the requirement to be completely with zero fuel emissions until the year 2050. So sustainable aviation fuels, so-called SAF, are the one and only solution. And there we have basically 2 different ways to go. Well, there's one well-known way, that's the so-called biofuels. You can do it from all kinds of feedstock or from many kinds of feedstock. And we have the so-called e-fuels. These are fuels made just by green energy, CO2 and water. And unfortunately, we have the situation that biofuels are available in small amounts. Therefore, they are really expensive, nearly 2 to 5 times as fossil kerosene. And if you increase the demand for this type of fuels, which are restricted just by the availability of feedstock, then the price will further increase. So that is not the solution we need for the future. We have a complete different situation with the so-called e-fuels. To that a little bit later. To show that biofuels or sustainable fuels work very well, Airbus has demonstrated in March 16 of this year a flight using 100% of biofuels for this flight. And there's a very good thing in addition that biofuels are burning much, much, much cleaner than fossil kerosene. So let's take a look on the green fuels, the PTL fuels, and the chemistry behind this kind of fuel is not new. It's really very old. It was discovered in Germany in the 20s of the previous century and were patented, or they're given a patent in 1925. So that's nearly 100 years old. And basically, you have energy. At those days, they are using coal or electricity made out of coal. Today, we have here in the beautiful situation to have renewable energies by wind, by sun. And then you need water. And then you need CO2. And then you need a catalysator, and then you get with some chemistry in between PTL fuel. And the good thing is that these fuels are already certified by ASTM, that is the agency which is certifying fuels for aviation purpose. And as I has explained already, the CO2, which is exhausted while using an engine, can be recovered again when you produce the fuel. So you get a full circle for CO2, and that means you have no limitations to fly as much as you like. And another very important advantage is the feedstock is really unlimited, and you can do it everywhere in the world. You can do it if you have green energy available, water available, and carbon dioxide available. And that is nearly at every place available. Of course, it's very important to improve ATC, also air traffic control. And this is an additional way to save about 10% of emissions. You may ask now, building up a new industry producing e-fuels, we call it Zerosene in our organization, must cost a lot of money. Where shall it come from? And the IATA, and that is the International Association of the Air Transport Industry, has agreed in cooperation with the United Nations to a program called CORSIA. And in CORSIA, every airline is dedicated to give some money just referring to the amount of fuels they use. And it is expected that altogether more than 2, maybe up to 6 billion US dollar will come in worldwide until 2025. And if you look a little bit further, 15 years from now, it could be as much as 24 billion US dollar. And this is a lot of money which you can invest in these technologies. Besides making aviation clean and protecting the climate, there are additional benefits of PTL-based aviation fuels. And the most important is that that if you use PTL fuels, excuse me, if you use PTL, sorry about that, if you use PTL fuels, you're burning much cleaner. If your engine is burning cleaner, you don't produce contrails. If you don't produce contrails, you protect the climate even more, because contrails have a much worse impact on the climate than CO2. So this is a very important benefit in addition. So, and then another very, very important benefit is, you should know that the average life cycle of a commercial aircraft is between 20 to 35 years. So aircraft which are now under production or just in service will most probably fly in the year 2050. And in 2050, we are already committed to net zero in CO2 emissions. So it is impossible to replace all these aircraft until the year 2050. But if you can use a fleet which is already existing, that is the benefit of e-fuels, then you can go forward, and then you can make use of what you have, the fleet which is in existence, and protect the climate at the same time. And in this little overview, you can see that from the aircraft flying today, more than 10,000 aircraft will still be in service in the year 2037. The question is, nevertheless, we have to expect that e-fuels may be, at least in the introduction period, more expensive than fossil fuels. And the question is, who is going to pay the extra price? And especially in the business and corporate aviation, these companies are very much interested, much more than an average passenger. They are much more interested in getting a clean image. And they are ready to pay a higher price for the fuel, if necessary, if they have, or if it helps to reduce the CO2 emissions. And therefore, we see that the private and business and corporate aviation sector will be the right sector to introduce these e-fuels into the market. And we know already from many, many companies that say, whenever the fuel is available, we are going to buy it. So there is a market for these fuels, and these fuels help also the wind energy producers, because sometimes the wind is blowing, but the demand for electricity is not there. And if you combine the production of green electricity with the production of green aviation fuels, and you can do it whenever you have energy in excess, then it is something which helps to improve the business of the wind energy producers, and it helps also aviation. Therefore, I think together we can achieve a lot. Let's mitigate climate change and work for the good of our industries. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ralph and Stephen, for organizing this interesting and very insightful presentation on aviation industry globally and the new ideas for sustainable aviation, which include not only change of the fuel but also in the technology of aircraft and management of the traffic, etc. And that is, I think, it's an interesting aspect. I was really, surprised that they are already reduced. Since 1990, the fuel efficiency has been growing substantially, 2% every year, and that has saved a lot of billions of liters of jet fuel. That's a very interesting piece of knowledge. Apart from the other, So this is very exciting and interesting speech. And let me move on to my colleague Narayan, who will talk about electric vehicles and renewables from primarily from Indian perspective. He is associate director for energy, electricity and fuel division. So over to you, Narayan.
Thank you, Shri sir. I hope my screen is visible. Can you please confirm it?
Not yet.
Oh, sorry.
Yes, yes.
Thank you so much. So, good evening, everyone. Myself, Narayan Kumar Sri Kumar. Today, I would like to focus on the topic of greening the wheels, the role of renewable energy in electric mobility ecosystem in India. Because my earlier two fellow speakers have already touched the ship and aviation. I can say the water and air they have already covered. So it's my time to look into the roads. Because as you everybody knows that mobility is the central and highly valued feature of the human society. Indeed, mobility is essential for a productive functioning of economies and ability of the individual to assess the opportunities they need to try. In the case of India, India had the second largest road network in the world, which was spanning to more than around 6 million kilometers. And road transportation contributes to more than 78% of the total gross value addition that has been generated by the transport sector, which constitutes to around 6% of the total GVA of the service sector itself. So looking more into dwelling into India, India is the fifth largest automobile market in the world and always trying to become the fourth or third largest in the world as the number of vehicles that has been produced from India was keep on increasing. And when you look into the COVID times also, even though our domestic sales have been dropped out, so our exports have been increased by more than 15%. But on contrary, the hard fact is that India is among the most polluted countries in the world and has been ranked in the fifth position in the world topmost the polluted cities. So you can see me in the screen. You can see me in a cloudy, foggy Delhi. You can experience these days also because almost 14 out of 15 most polluted cities are in India. 36% of the NOx emission in Delhi will due to vehicles. 25% of PM 2.5 emission is also from the vehicles. So vehicles, there is a problem exists. But to understand more or to dwell more into this issue of this e-mobility, our team tried to do a tripling assessment of that because when we are thinking about the e-mobility, apart from the cost, one of the major issues that Indian customers, I can say, I just want to focus that word Indian customers because Indian market is very price sensitive market. One of the major drawbacks or the major hurdle that has been in the large scale deployment of e-mobility is along with the high capital cost, there is a trip anxiety also. Because on the left hand side, you can see a share of the different trip lengths in Delhi. in which around 71% of the trips are less than 5 kilometers. So there is no point of range anxiety. The only thing is that we need to make them aware about these things and how we can overcome these things. So the moving ahead on the EV ecosystem in India. On the left-hand side, you can see that the EV sales are steadily growing in India. In financial year 2016, it's hardly 0.1 percentage. Now, after the 5 years, by introduction of large number of initiatives by the national and central agencies, now it was reaches almost 1.32%. But still, we have a long way to go. Very recently, we have in the COP26 itself, Terry was happy to be partnered with the Niti Aayog in the development of e-Amrit website, which is basically the national directory for e-mobility in India. And when you are looking into the EV, the policies that has been pushing EVs, you can see that there is a budgetary allocation for the manufacturing of electric vehicle. FAME 1 and FAME 2 schemes are exactly the examples for that fast adoption and manufacturing of electric vehicles. We have come across with the two FAME schemes to push these vehicle penetration. You can see that you can relate those push directly with the sales that has been happening in India. Along with that, it is very much important to create the business models for that. Energy Efficiency Service Limited, which is the largest ESCO energy saving company in India, have initiated these purposes. EV charging, in the case of EV charging infrastructure also, guideline standards have been already brought down by the Ministry of Power. When it look into the safety and connectivity standards, the Central Electricity Authority, the apex body for bringing out the technical regulations in the country, have brought down these things. The promotion of electric vehicles is already taken care by the road transport and highways, the sanctioned public charging infrastructure by the Department of Heavy Industry. So each and every industry have been working in silos to promote these electric vehicles. But there is a need for the coordinated efforts because the potential benefits of these electric vehicles itself is huge also because not only the improvement in the air quality, it will help in the GHG mitigation, it will help to promote the renewables when we are looking to fuel these electric vehicles from the renewables because India has a very much high ambitious renewable energy targets because post COP26 our honorable prime minister has pledged for around 500 gigawatt of renewable energy by 2050 and he promised to assess or utilize the renewable energy for 50% of the energy needs. So by pushing the e-mobility, that will give a great momentum for the promotion of renewables also. It will help to enhance the energy security and it will help to improve the PLF of this power plant that has been working over here. And moreover, through Atmanirbhar Bharat, Make in India campaign, that government want to develop India as an, I want to position India as an electric hub. So, Mr. Shri Narendra Modi ji itself has, during the launch of this e-Amrit website, has mentioned that the world is in the middle of new mobility revolution, and India has to plays a very important role in leading these things because through our national mission on transformative mobility and battery storage, we are targeting around 30% of the EV sales by 2030. So you can understand the numbers that we are planning to achieve because on the other hand right now we are hardly less than 2%. From that 2% we want to achieve a target of around 30% of by 2030. So when you are looking into the EV space, there are a large number of pillars that has been functioning on that. One of the major pillars that has been working as well as which will helps to promote the EV is the electric vehicle charging. So we try to look into the what are the barriers in the promotion of this electric vehicle or electric vehicle charging facilities because everybody was speaking about the electric vehicle, but nobody was speaking about the electric charging infrastructure that is to be that is become a chicken and egg issue, so which have to come first. So there is always an uncertainty that exists around this EV penetration, and there is less aptitude from these private developers for the because the lower capacity utilization because EV penetration itself is very low, and there is a high cost of finance that has been related to these electric charging infrastructures, and there is no mandate for the distribution companies to develop a charging infrastructure because even though when you are looking into the renewable energy, it has the distribution companies have a mandate to purchase renewable energy because there is an RPO obligation, renewable purchase obligation is there for the discoms. But in the case of charging infrastructure, there is no mandate from the discoms, and there are some discoms in which fixed charges for the e-mobility is not at all implemented, like in the case of Delhi. And there is a no mechanism for socializing the cost of the power infrastructure development because the point is that in India, the every whatever be the spend that has been done by the distribution companies need to be go through their annual revenue requirement. In that context, there is no separate provisions for including what would be the strengthening or the augmentation of the grid that need to be done for the electric mobility need to be taken care of that. Lack of managed charging framework and functions, of course, because India is growing and a huge amount of intermittent energy as well as the e-mobility is coming to the grid. The distribution companies have to look into the what are the type of solutions or the technical studies that need to be done to assess that what would be the impact of these e-mobility in the grid. And to support all these things, there is no regulatory framework for charging the service providers to participate in the power market for the demand response. Even though in Indian power sector, we have come up with the demand side management regulations, as well as some of the states have come up with these smart grid regulations also. But the provision for bringing about the demand response, still it's in a very low condition. Along with that, there is an issue of that how we can electric vehicle can play an important role in the demand response. It's still unclear. So there is a blockage in the regulatory in the development of the regulatory framework itself. The another important issues are the issues related to the administrative clearance as well as the land edification and allocation. So it lacks a single window system for solving these issues. So on one hand, there are a number of issues that has been related to these e-mobility issues. But on the other hand, it was a very much, I can say that it's a brighter side of India in terms of renewable energy. You can see on the left-hand side of my graph, we have a very ambitious target. In 2022, we have a target of 175 gigawatt. We have already reached by 2021 itself, we have already reached more than 100 gigawatt. And we have a target of 500 gigawatt by 2030. And when you look into the prices, renewable energy during the last decline is a decade of decline. I can say that by showing this graph. In this graph, you can see it from yourself that how the solar photovoltaic, concentrating solar photovoltaic, how their prices have been fall down. Because almost more than 70% of the cost reduction have been brought down during the last decade itself. So the renewable energies are getting more and more cheaper. It was coming in their parity is coming along with the conventional fuels. So it's an important aspect that how these renewable energy can be utilized when we are developing the e-mobility infrastructure. In that context, Terry, our team have tried to develop one of the business model for one of the public transporting infrastructure in the state of West Bengal. In the West Bengal, what we have done was very recently under the FAME 2 framework, the West Bengal Transport Corporation have procured more than 80 number of electric buses that need to be get operated in Kolkata. So for these 80 buses, they have deployed around 10 depots. In every depot, they have come up with an DC fast charging as well as slow charging. Six DC slow charging and one DC fast charging. And we have tried to taken in one of the biggest depot in these WBTC, that is in the Kasba bus depot. And we try to assess that what would be the charging pattern of these things. On the right hand side, you can see that what would be the charging pattern of these 10 to 12 buses that has been lying in this depot. So what we have done was we tried to simulate that if these depot have been covered up, whatever I can say that whatever be the rooftop that has been available, you can see on the right end, you can see a blue strip in which that is an assessment that we have done through our helioscope study to assess that if these depot have been covered with the solar rooftop panels and that energy can be fed back to the grid or that has been locally consumed, what could be the advantages that can be brought into the grid. And we try to assess that if there is an able to bring this TOD, time of tariff mechanism, also into the grid, what could be the impact on the grid? We are surprising to see that the annual energy savings for that best depot would be close to around 2 million when you try to bring the solar plus the TOD mechanisms. And along with that, if you're trying to bring a solar without TOD mechanism, it would get reduced to 1.4 million. But the need for the charging mechanisms along with the TOD is very important. Why? Because the buses are getting also get charged during the peak hours also, because there are some peak hours in which their industrial and domestic grid consumption was going on, as well as the price in the IEX, which is the power markets in India, is also keep on going on. So there is a very much importance to bring the conditional or conscious charging in the grid. In that aspect also, we try to put our assessment in a case study in Delhi. We try to assess what could be the impact when you are going with a coordinated charging infrastructure. So on the left-hand side, you can see that we try to develop an EV load estimation model, which will try to assess the input parameters like vehicle characteristics, travel characteristics, charging characteristics, and other parameters. The first slide that we have mention to you that what would be the travel length of this based on this study only. In this study, we try to assess that for different vehicle category, what are their travel characteristics, what are their charging characteristics, to assess that what could be our EV load estimations. When there is an uncoordinated scenario, on the right hand side, you can see that there is an uncoordinated scenario, what will happen. The blue shaded area shows what would be the system load of one of the distribution company, which is the BSS Rajdhani in Delhi. And the green one shows what could be the office charging. The blue one, light blue one, shows what would be the public charging effect. Then the orange one shows the home charging. Then there is in bus charging and three-wheeler charging. So we have considered all these consumer categories while assessing this model. And our model have given a very important result that ICT is the way for the smart vehicle and infrastructure. There is a need for coordinated scenarios, because when we are doing an uncoordinated scenario and when we are pushing for more and more electric mobility, you can see that on the right hand side on the uncoordinated scenario, the peak load starts increasing because of the e-mobility load. So it is a very much importance to bring the smart solutions, or I can say the advanced metering infrastructure, to inform the consumer about the need for the time of day tariff, as well as how he could charge based on the system availability, or after assessing that how we can make the load curves as much as flatten as possible, because these vehicles give a great amount of flexibility when we are trying to bring more and more intermittent energy to the grid. So, in short, ICT is the way forward for the smart vehicles and the infrastructure. So, to sum up my presentations on this EV ecosystem, what we feel that from a distribution company perspective, there's a need for the mandatory deployment of AMI infrastructure for the e-mobility, because what I have explained in the Delhi case study reveals that there is a need for the advanced metering infrastructure which have the capability for the smart grid technologies that need to be adopted. Second major aspect would be the technical impact studies, because we have done a couple of impact studies in which how this EV charging infrastructure is polluting our distribution sector. It's very much important to assess that what are the type of, what could be the power quality that has been available, what is the voltage imbalance that has been happening, what are the amount of harmonics that is going to be get injected to the grid. So how we can overcome this? So we have to do timely intervention for that. We are not doing a timely intervention. It was actually trying to bring the network augmentation cost, which is going to add on the capex that has to be required for the annual revenue requirement, which will in turn increase to the tariff. And to promote RE-based EV charging infrastructure, the discoms have to give the great emphasis, especially on their high-end consumers like the commercial buildings and the industry consumers who have an huge amount of rooftop available with them. They can utilize it for the development of the EV charging. And for the public EV charging, they can be given as an RPO target also, and with an open access facility. Because right now in India is in discussion for the green open access, in which the users can avail the green power not from their own states, they can get the power from outside the states. The typical examples would be on Delhi Metro Rail Corporation. It's turned out to be the greenest metro in the world. They are able to procure the power from the one of the largest solar park in India, which is situated in Madhya Pradesh, Reva Solar Park, which will help to make them more and more greener. There are large number of charges or can be waived off because of this renewable power, because it was going to happening in any days. When you are looking into the charging infrastructure also, there is a need for introduce a rate-based makeup ready infrastructure, because when you look into the Western world, like US or European market, there is makeup ready infrastructure have been already available, and the public investors would be more interested to make funding on it. If we want to bring more and more private participations in this charging infrastructure business, there is in very much importance to give more priority to the make ready infrastructure. The pilots on coordinated charging infrastructure need to be developed, so because it would become an additional income for these developers, because when they are able to participate in these demand response events, the discoms can, distribution companies can share their whatever be the savings that have been getting from this peak by saving these peak power purchase costs with the developers who are able to adjust their charging, or I can say with the coordinated charging infrastructure, how they are able to behave according to the system load that has been available. EV friendly state policies and tariffs, the promotion of demand response market mechanism, because it's still in a very nascent stage in India. There is a need to push the demand response market mechanisms in India to promote vehicle to grid and grid to vehicle more and more common. There should be a single window for the administrative clearance and the fiscal incentives. So in short, from an utility as well as from a charging infrastructure, there is an integrated approach is also required because policy coherence and interlinked decision making. It's also very much important when you are developing because this ecosystem is directly or indirectly related to a number of other ecosystems like utility to the road transportation system to the private developers, the financing mechanism. So it has been interlinked to many other things. So there is a policy coherence is very much important. It will help to promote the multi-stakeholder promotions for a collaborative decision because many departments have been working on silos. There is a coherence that need to be brought down on that. For that, we have to create the awareness among of India. So there is another important opportunity of exploring the opportunities on green hydrogen because right now India is looking for the opportunities not only on the road but also in the aviation and the maritime activities. How the green hydrogen can be explored because the private sectors have warmly welcomed like one of the two bigger business collaborators in India, like Adani Group as well as on the Reliance Group. During their last meetings, they have come up with a very ambitious targets for the promotion of the green hydrogen through their gigafactories. So it will give a futuristic ambition vision for India to bring down the green hydrogen also towards the mobility. So that's all from my end. If you have any queries, please feel free to ask and share your thoughts about this presentation. Thank you so much. Over to you, Shri sir.
Thanks, Narayan, for a very interesting and very elaborate presentation on EV sector in India, electric vehicle sector, which is just picking up. And as you mentioned, the penetration, in spite of a lot of government support and support mechanism in terms of subsidy for vehicles, etc., the penetration is hardly 1.3%, which is very low when we are targeting very high percentage by 2030, something like more than 30%. Also the various recommendations from Terry study about how this scenario can be changed with respect to infrastructure, with respect to policy, and also the approach towards the whole EV vehicle business. I think that was very interesting and very insightful presentation. Thanks a lot. We have all the three presentations. So now I will open the session for question answers. Anybody who has got a question can just type it in Q&A box, and we will open it and discuss it.
To our last speaker.
Please.
Yes, so thank you very much. This was very good to see. It's not, of course, my kind of professional main expertise, but of course we are looking at it from the wind energy angle as well. One thing I just wanted to hear from you again. I mean, I personally driving an electric car now for a year. Before I wait 5 years a plug-in hybrid electric, and I see the very big potential for using the cars also as storage. Some of the cars which are on the market, they can do this, what is called bi-directional charging. But for example, in Germany, it's not allowed. So you would be able to, like, you take my car, 64 kilowatt hours, that is good for 1 week of our consumption, more or less. So you could do a lot of balancing with if you have a high penetration of renewables in the grid. But what is just required is the regulations, which do not forbid it, but encourage such kind. So I wanted to hear what's the discussion around this in India.
Shri sir, shall I respond it on?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, Stephen, thanks for this raising this point on how this your electric vehicle. I first of all I would like to congratulate that you're driving the e-mobility. So when you're looking into the electric vehicle domain itself, the major issue that has been created right now was to when you want to bring that electric vehicle to the grid, or if you want to increase the flexibility of the grid using electric vehicles, there is a need for a smart metering infrastructure over there. But unfortunately, in India, we have initiated few pilot projects for implementing smart meter system. And one of the major key performance indicators that Indian utilities right now focusing is not more into e-mobility. They are more concerned with the other operational challenges in the distribution sector. Like they want to reduce the losses. They want to give 24 into 7 reliable supply to the people. They want to manage the peak. So the smart meter are yet to arrive. Once the smart meter is arrived, then what we can think about of bringing these electric vehicles to the grid. So even though when you are looking into the regulatory framework, almost every state in India have come up with their demand side management regulations, which we used to term as that DSM regulations. But in the case of DSM regulations also, we still not yet clear about the introduction of demand response, because in India, when you look into the power procurement portfolio of any distribution companies, around 70 to 90% of their total entire power procurement would be from the long term contracts that they have signed for 20 years, 25 years. So it was not easy for them to taken back from this contract and let's go for some demand response systems. Only 10% they have been procuring from the market, and in introducing that demand response system, there should be a predefined signaling mechanism as well as a price motivation for that. But still, it has been lagging on that. We have come up with these smart regulations to fulfill this gap. We are still working on it. This is what that has been happening in the space of demand response and vehicle to grid and grid to vehicle that has been happening in India.
It's more than demand response. It's supply, potential supply. So that, but if you have smart meters, I think that is a good already condition is fulfilled, because then technically it could be done, because we have all these cars which will stand during the night, and they are batteries. They could be used. But thank you for the answer. Yes.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you. Thank you, Narayan, for this response. We still have about 15 minutes. Stephen, would you like to add something to the sessions?
Yeah, I think the session. Thank you. This was give us a very good overview of where we really need to start now acting. That is my perception, because now it is kind of consensus that we need to come to very high, close to 100% renewable energy share, and we know electricity how it can be done. But these sectors that we touched upon today are still those sectors which are, well, it's encouraging to see, let me say, what I heard today. I learned that we've come further than what I heard a year ago. And aviation and shipping, they are kind of seems to get ready, but there still seems to be a lot of work to do. And maybe the road transportation is one small step further, because some countries have already now, I mean, we talk about millions of cars which are already on the road with electric vehicles, but the mass penetration is not yet there. So very, for me, encouraging that this important topic from our renewable side, I think we're starting to have the answers. That would be my kind of takeaway from this session.
Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you. And this is, I think this was very well said. It is, these sectors are, evolving, and there are a lot of challenges. Main challenge, I believe, is because of the scale of this sector, the kind of energy consumption, and which is again, since it is a mobility related thing, the storage of energy with high density energy is also an important aspect, and that is one of the main challenge for batteries kind of systems, storage.
I mean, at least from my private experience, I can just tell you that our car can go 500 kilometers if the conditions are fine. So I see that in the car on the car side, the technologies, and this is technology which was developed, let's say 3-4 years ago. So today it's even further. So I believe that on that side, as I said, we are at least one step further than when we look at the aviation, because which plane is at the moment going on renewable fuel? It's almost zero. Now, some take these biofuels, which we heard are not a good solution in the long term. And the same with the ships. I mean, some are using these sails, but it's just concepts at the moment.
Yes. So on this
So
note,
there is a question from Vimal.
sorry, there is a question.
There is a question in the chat box, Shri sir. Can a legal action to be made for the mandatory use of electric vehicle for a person having more than 2 vehicles, or a rebate in any form should be given for promoting sustainable process? Responding to Vimal, there is always a rebate is already available. Even in the income tax, there is an exemption has been given for the purchase of renewable electric vehicles. That is close to around INR 1.5 lakh rupees is available as a rebate for this purchase of electric vehicle. That is, of course, that is a capital subsidy is also available with some states. So rebate is always available, but legal action for a person who have been using 2 vehicles, it's always a personal choice whether you have to go with a renewable power. The only thing we can do would be we have to make them aware about the what are the positive benefits of utilizing an electric vehicle, and we can try to convince those people who can try to bring down. For that context only, we have started that website with the support from Niti Aayog. We have tried to develop the website for the Niti Aayog. The entire thing would be I would be happy that if you can visit that website also, eAmrit website, in which we try to push how to make the people aware about this e-mobility, how they can choose the electric vehicle, and what are the costs and benefits that has to be achieved associated with this bringing e-mobility to their circle. So please visit that thing and please share your feedbacks, valuable feedbacks and comments about that.
Yeah, if I may support what you say, adding maybe that in some countries like the European Union is aiming now at 2035 as a final year for allowing non-electric vehicles to be sold, or they say fossil fuel new registrations. So there's a number of jurisdictions now which is actually setting up final dates. I think Norway, Netherlands, they will do it even earlier. But I totally agree with you. The people need to experience that, because as I said, I mean, personally, you will never bring me back into a fossil driven car because it's just much more comfortable and it's cheaper. And I think that in particular in India, even when you have electricity prices, which are certainly lower than in Germany, but if you can, on the countryside, you can have your own PV system, charging your car with that, that is unbeatable. That's the cheapest individual mobility you can have, aside, of course, from riding bike or walking by foot. So the price in combination with the comfort
True,
gain
Stephen.
that you have, that will really convince people.
Yeah, I think pricing differential can be
Yeah,
introduced
true.
instead of proper legal penalty action. Pricing differential can be introduced. Let's wait if there is any other question. We still have 10 minutes of session to close. But this was really a very interesting session. I had both the sessions, finance and this. We got a very different perspective about both the shipping and aviation industry, and also the EV, the progress of EV in India, what is happening and how it has to go. So I thank all the three presenters, and also Stephen for organizing these international presenters specifically. Special thanks to you. And then Narayan again for a very interesting presentation. So with this, I think I will close the session and hand it over to the webcam host. Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening or good afternoon.
Thank you, Shrey sir. Thank you, Stephen. Bye. Good day.